Conflict is born of egoic personality, of the urge to prove oneself right. At its core, this is simply ignorance. Yet, at a simple human level, the real tragedy is that children bear the brunt of it. When parents ask, "Why is my child like this?" it is worth noting that children often act as mirrors. We must begin with ourselves. It is impossible to heal another while remaining unhealed. Place the tongue in Kachari Mudra, or at the very least, let it rest behind the teeth. Philosophy, spiritual practice, and accumulated experience strengthen a person's ability to withstand such disturbances. The more people cultivate spiritual practice, the faster the world transforms. Conflicts are fueled by the human ego. They grow out of resistance, a refusal to accept what one does not like. Tension arises when people simply stop listening to one another. Each clings to their own viewpoint, locked inside their private interpretation of reality. Imagine for a moment that we could anchor our awareness in the heart, not the physical organ, but the heart as a state of being, as a lived experience. Conflicts would dissolve of their own accord. Suppose we truly allowed ourselves to feel, to experience love inwardly and deeply, and shifted our attention from the restless mind to the heart, to the emotional center. It would transform everything. People would become gentler and calmer. Conflict is born of egoic personality. It stems from non-acceptance, from the ego-fueled urge to prove oneself right at any cost. If we consider those who lead countries, or indeed anyone in positions of authority, and they act from an ego-driven perspective, little good can come of it. When ego dominates, dialogue disappears. Each of us carries inner programs instilled in childhood. By adulthood, these patterns have taken root, and we live by them almost unconsciously. Take, for example, someone burdened by unresolved childhood trauma who rises to power. What good can they truly accomplish? Very little, if at all. Our core beliefs are largely formed in the first 7 years of life. For the rest of our days, we tend to operate from those early imprints. So if leaders, whether of nations, organizations, or even schools, lack the capacity to govern their own consciousness, we can hardly be surprised by the outcomes we witness. We see what we see. We reap what we sow. And yet there is a sense that something is shifting. Consciousness itself seems to be evolving. Gradually, some individuals give way to others who operate at a higher level of awareness. We can observe this change unfolding. This is how space itself is influencing us. This space appears to be vibrating differently, awakening greater understanding. Human consciousness today is under immense strain, yet at the same time, it is changing at remarkable speed. The process feels like a rapid evolutionary spiral. This is the moment we are living through. It's like there's a powerful mill working away inside us, grinding through our own awareness. Everything is being ground down at a breathtaking pace. Things that once felt solid and certain are crumbling, fading out, and yet a few essential grains still remain. What is largely missing is awareness. True awareness is cultivated through spiritual practice, and it is precisely the absence of such awareness and knowledge that gives rise to conflict. At its core, this is simply ignorance. Those who begin to recognize this process often seek a way out. They look for methods that will carry them into deeper self-inquiry, enabling them to access greater inner energy and learn to regulate their psycho-emotional responses. The The difficulty is that these reactions arise from the unconscious. They are frequently the product of programs shaped over many years, sometimes perhaps even before birth. It is entirely possible for patterns to be imprinted as early as the womb. I have met and continue to meet many people, including spiritual practitioners, who are attempting to free themselves from these ingrained patterns. It's no simple task. These programs have become entrenched positions within the personality. Consider even the basic fight or flight response, rooted in the reptilian brain, the instinct for self-preservation. Add to that the primitive impulse of me, mine. Not give or share, but me, mine, grasping, holding, clinging. But these old programs are temporary, and now everything is shifting. Many people experience powerful inner turbulence. I hesitate to call it instability, yet there is a noticeable swinging between extremes. Old patterns are disintegrating. Space seems to be influencing consciousness. Cosmic energies exert a powerful influence on us. With this pressure comes something new, and not everyone is able to bear it. Some even turn to tranquilizers simply to cope with the strain. If I were to offer any guidance, it would be spiritual practice. I hesitate to prescribe anything else. Advice alone can be pointless. If something hits a raw nerve, a person may simply erupt in negativity. It takes energy to contain one's own stubbornness, resentment, anger, even rage. These states are often described as lower frequencies, inferior qualities. The baser aspects of human nature, impulses that pull us downward to the demonic plane. These are demonic tendencies. When a person manages to restrain themselves consciously, to pause, to steady their response, it shows that they possess sufficient awareness to withstand those impulses, not only inner energy, but also understanding. That understanding must be cultivated deliberately. Without consistent inner work, nothing truly changes. Conflict within the family, which sadly is all too common, often leads to breakdown. Yet, at a simple human level, the real tragedy is that children bear the brunt of it. They do not fully understand what is happening. Their perception is different. Children entering the world today seem unlike previous generations. They arrive from on high. They arrive from entirely different star systems. They are attuned to another paradigm altogether. And yet they find themselves immersed in the unresolved patterns of their family environment. What one might bluntly call a kind of parental swamp. I say this so that parents might develop a deeper understanding. This is not said to offend or accuse, but to highlight how important it is not to perpetuate these cycles, but to aspire to something higher. Often children arrive as living examples of what we ourselves should aspire to. At times they challenge their parents, contradict them, even oppose them outright. In their own, sometimes awkward way, they seem to demonstrate that something needs to change. When parents ask, "Why is my child like this?" it is worth noting that children often act as mirrors. The essential task, then, is inner work. We must begin with ourselves. It is impossible to heal another while remaining unhealed. Conflicts arise. What I am about to say lies outside the framework of conventional science, which in its current form is only 200 to 300 years old. Yet there exists knowledge that stretches back hundreds of thousands of years. According to that knowledge, humanity has long been living in what is called the Iron Age. We are now entering the early stages of a period that gradually elevates us in terms of evolution, helping us to become more fully human. This new phase has only just begun, and it will take considerable time for the transformation to unfold in this period. The Iron Age, or Kali-yuga. Human life is cheapened, and people are furthest removed from spirituality. Yet, it is also during such challenging times that great teachers appear. Masters and saints incarnate to assist humanity's evolution, offering an example and radiating a transformative spiritual force. They may not touch everyone, yet many believe that it is precisely through their presence that humanity has been shielded from far graver global catastrophes. Through these incarnated avatars, these elevated beings. I once spoke about how, from the perspective of human embodiment, every person appears almost like an avatar. Each of us carries knowledge from on high, though not everyone is ready to explore it. Yet in truth, we are all obliged to discover it. There's a sort of game at play, where it seems as if we are the owners of all this knowledge, as if we are small g gods, creators of our own reality. And yet paradoxically, most of us barely touch the potential we possess. The human brain is the greatest instrument, capable of encompassing the entire universe. Artificial intelligence, with all its future possibilities, is insignificant in comparison. It's nothing. It is merely a digital framework. If we consider what one person represents, the potential within a single fully developed brain far exceeds even the most advanced computers, whether quantum machines or AI systems with instant responses and access to vast amounts of information. And it's worth noting, all that AI draws upon is horizontal knowledge. It does not reach the vertical dimension. It uses the data accumulated here on Earth. It pales in comparison to a fully developed human brain. Yet we are steadily moving toward that potential. And let us not forget, artificial intelligence itself was created by humans. Why do conflicts arise? I'll say it again. Humanity is currently quite distant from the spiritual center. The sun, which radiates love, peace, tranquility, nonviolence, and everything associated with higher consciousness. We are very distant from it. To illustrate, imagine a clock face. 12 o'clock represents the spiritual zone of the sun's radiation. We are somewhere around 7 or half past 7, a significant distance. Kali-yuga is the farthest from that center. After it comes Dvapara-yuga, and then Satya-yuga. The closer we are to the center, the brighter the light of spirituality, and the fewer conflicts there are. In Satya-yuga, there are no conflicts at all, because the truth is equally clear to everyone. In our time, that truth is neither seen nor heard. Philosophers tell us it is out there, but in fact, the truth is within. When we seek it inwardly, conflict naturally diminishes. Sometimes it may sound like a joke, sometimes not. But if we truly want to avoid conflict, we must learn detachment. One practical method is keeping the tongue in Kachari Mudra, rolled backwards, an effective method of holding the tongue. Traditionally, the tongue is placed behind the teeth, but ideally, it is extended further into the nasopharynx, because this allows a greater flow of energy, which in turn increases the flow of information. And the more information, the deeper our understanding. When we create conditions for a powerful flow of life force, or the transcendental energy of spirit. Our awareness naturally rises, and the higher our awareness, the fewer conflicts we experience. For example, an aware person encountering someone who is angry or irritated by everything will see it clearly and might even find it a little amusing. They understand the pointlessness of the other person's behavior, but they do not judge. They also avoid creating situations that would worsen the other person's state. Yet conflicts have other sources as well. There are forces of cosmic illusion, entities that hold back evolution, what common traditions call demons or evil spirits. These beings are specifically attuned to generating discord. The time has come for people to realize that subtle, semi-material beings exist, entities that emerge from the astral plane and affect human consciousness. A normally calm person might suddenly act out, swear, create tension, or even commit a crime. Why? Those low-frequency entities attach themselves to a human being and feed on negativity. They provoke conflicts at home, at work, on the street. Anywhere they can stir fear, anger, or hostility in order to feed on the energy generated. This is known as gavach harvesting, the gathering of life force that ultimately serves no constructive purpose and simply dissipates. Over time, it weakens the person and accelerates aging. Occasionally, we witness exorcists removing such entities that have attached themselves to a human, clouding their mind and distorting their behavior. The process may involve prayers, rituals, or other specialized methods. For experienced masters, it is often instantaneous. The entity cannot remain in their field. If a person is close to a saint or master, the entity is forced to leave. I have witnessed this several times. You see, the presence of a master or a saint sanctifies the space, radiating a high-frequency energy. In this vibration, low-frequency entities find it unbearable and are forced to depart from the body. When the entity departs, the person seems to awaken. Their eyes regain clarity. Their presence becomes vibrant. They may ask, "Where am I? Who am I? What just happened?" As if they have woken from a long sleep. Such things are absolutely real. I remember seeing a young woman who looked very old. An entity had been using her as a shell for a long time. Even her voice had changed. But once the entity was removed, her tone became natural, soft, and pure. Her skin regained color, pink where there had been dull brown. Her face illuminated with her true nature. Many people witnessed it. The lesson is clear. Many conflicts begin at a subtle level. Because often we invite these low-frequency influences into our lives ourselves through harmful thinking and even the food we consume. I call it dirty food. Because people consume what carries low-frequency energy. Tamasic food, stale, spoiled, or improperly stored, should be avoided. Many people still eat items that have been sitting in the refrigerator for 5 or 6 days. The problem is that entities can inhabit even food kept in the fridge. Subtle beings attach themselves to these products, contaminating them energetically. With this food, people ingest these influences as well. That's why it is recommended to recite mantras or prayers before meals. At their root, conflicts come from ignorance and the influence of external forces on our consciousness. That's all. Some forces seem determined to keep the world in suffering. Everyone senses them, yet few truly see them. The task of the Creator is entirely different. Every person has freedom of choice. We can choose to walk the path of creation or the path of suffering. Once, an avatar was asked about suffering and joy. He replied that both joy and suffering are blessings. But ask me for joy. Both are forms of grace. Yet people often choose differently. Consider close relatives. Twins, for example. One may suffer while the other flourishes. How is it possible? They are identical in form. Yet their souls, their experiences are distinct. Parallel realities unfold. One endures pain, the other is happy. Of course, complete happiness for one, while everyone else suffers, is impossible. It's utopia, yet it is far from the norm. We still feel the suffering of others, yet anyone committed to self-development understands that even as they rise above the world, the pain of others remains visible to them. The higher we ascend, the more our empathy grows. Empathy means we cannot ignore the suffering of others. Empathy means we feel the pain of others, even while dwelling in our own bliss. Their suffering is not ours in the sense of personal burden, yet we remain attuned to it. The more people cultivate spiritual practice, the faster the world transforms. We are already on the threshold of a more elevated age. A spiritual one, if you like. Gradually, humanity moves through Dvapara-yuga to Treta-yuga and ultimately to Satya-yuga. There are 4 principal yugas. Kali-yuga is the furthest removed from the divine, from the absolute. It is the darkest and most ignorant of the ages that endures for several thousand years. Then comes Dvapara-yuga, a transitional era that begins to lift humanity out of that darkness. This is the simplest explanation. That age is more spiritually attuned. During this time, technology develops. Electricity gives way to magnetism. Next follows Treta-yuga. In this age, spiritual values become more universal. Higher principles move to the forefront of society. Spiritual practices, mantra, and sacred chant become central to daily life. Humanity itself changes. And finally, Satya-yuga, the age of truth. May we all step into it, tomorrow, if only it were that simple. It is frankly rather difficult to give definitive advice on this subject. Life presents us with an infinite variety of situations, each with its own nuances and complications. Yet, in every circumstance, there is one essential task: to remain inwardly objective. Always remember, this situation has arisen for you. Ask yourself why. What is there to learn here? Who are you within this moment? If you remain at the same level as the conflict, you react. If you rise above it, you remain calm. And by calm, I do not mean passively enduring physical aggression. That is a separate matter altogether. Here we are speaking of verbal clashes, emotional tension, intellectual rivalry. If you are a wife and your husband is agitated, you might simply say, "All right, let's do it your way," and allow the storm to pass. Someone must choose to be the wiser one. If your spouse is upset, husband or wife, the most powerful response is often a measured one. Sometimes people simply need to be heard. Listening alone can dissolve half the conflict. The key is awareness. Prepare yourself inwardly so that you do not get drawn in. Simply do not take the bait. Without self-control, without awareness, things quickly become more difficult. That is why I suggest shifting your attention to the spine. That is a reservoir of heightened awareness. When your attention rests there, you are less likely to forget what truly matters. Place the tongue in Kichari Mudra, or at the very least, let it rest behind the teeth. Situations will vary endlessly. But if you understand that this turmoil is not your essence, that you need not identify with it, you begin to see clearly. You may recognize that someone is attempting to influence or provoke you. You may notice their ignorance or emotional state, not in a spirit of superiority, but simply with understanding. People always have reasons for their reactions. You can listen calmly and choose not to act. Calmly, you can nod and say, "Okay, good, that's the right way to go. Everything will be just fine." Or, if necessary, you can simply stand up and leave. If you feel triggered, it means you have encountered a stumbling block within yourself. The other person who provokes you is actually mirroring something unresolved in you, something that demands your attention. Here, yogic detachment proves universally effective. When something happens, it simply does not disturb you. You just don't care. Not out of coldness or indifference, but because you don't care. It genuinely does not touch you. Words are merely words. Interestingly, when you refuse to react to negativity, karma returns to its source. If someone tries to unload their anger onto you, to stir conflict or cast negativity your way, and you refuse to take it on, it simply returns to its source. The weight of it remains with them, often heavier than before. If you find this difficult, meditate more frequently. Reflect on the futility of most arguments. Consider the illusory nature of the world itself. Philosophy, spiritual practice, and accumulated experience strengthen a person's ability to withstand such disturbances. However, if there is a real threat to your physical safety, if someone is acting aggressively towards you, that is an entirely different matter. The body must be protected. It is your instrument. Without it, you cannot act. If you fail to accomplish it here, there you will not be granted another opportunity. If truth is not found here, there it will not be found either. If the kingdom is not realized here, it will not be discovered there. Therefore, protect the body at any cost, not at the cost of another life, but by whatever means are available and appropriate in the moment. Because circumstances differ so widely, it is impossible to give a single formula. Yet in all cases, cultivate inner detachment. Keep your awareness centered along the spine. If the situation permits, simply observe your breath while looking calmly at the person before you. Try to recognize within them a higher principle. Even if they are acting from a lower state, see the Atman within them. When you become aware of your own Atman and recognize that same essence in another, a sense of unity naturally arises. Sometimes that alone is enough to soften the atmosphere. If you practice mantra, silently recite it. It alters vibrations. If not, recite a prayer. It works in much the same way. If neither comes to mind, stand up and walk away.